The moment their lips met, everything around us seemed to freeze. My father's eyes widened in shock, his hand suspended mid-gesture from our heated argument just seconds before. His boss, Claire, pulled back slowly, her confident expression faltering only slightly as she whispered those words that would change everything. "That kiss was just for you." I stood there, a 16-year-old caught in the crossfire of adult emotions I barely understood, watching my father's life, and by extension, mine, take an unexpected turn that none of us saw coming. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more emotional family dramas that explore the complicated reality of love, parenting, and second chances. My name is Lily, and for the past 5 years, it had just been Dad and me against the world. Mom left when I was 11, deciding that family life wasn't for her after all. Dad, Michael to everyone else, had been both parents ever since, juggling his demanding job as a senior architect at Westfield Design while attending every school concert, parent-teacher conference, and teenage crisis I threw his way. Claire Donovan had been Dad's boss for only 8 months. She'd swept into Westfield Design like a hurricane, all sharp suits and sharper expectations. Dad complained about her constantly at first, how she demanded perfection, how she kept everyone working late, how she seemed to have a special talent for finding the smallest flaws in his designs. "She's impossible, Lily," he'd say while stirring spaghetti sauce, his tie loosened after another 12-hour workday. "Nothing is ever good enough for Claire Donovan." I'd roll my eyes, already recognizing something in his voice that he didn't yet, a grudging respect that was slowly evolving into something else entirely. The first time Claire came to our house was for an emergency project meeting when their office flooded. I came home from school to find 5 adults spread across our living room with blueprints and laptops everywhere. Claire stood out immediately, not just because she was the only woman in the group, but because of how she commanded the room. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair cut in a sleek bob and eyes that missed nothing. "You must be Lily," she said, extending her hand to me formally. "Your father speaks about you constantly." "All good things, I hope," I replied, shaking her hand and noticing how Dad watched our interaction nervously. "The best," she said with a smile that transformed her face completely. "He showed me your art portfolio. You have remarkable talent." That was the first surprise, Dad sharing my artwork with his boss. The second surprise was how Claire asked me thoughtful questions about my techniques and inspirations while the other architects returned to their discussions. She didn't speak to me like I was a child, but like my opinions mattered. After that day, Claire appeared in our lives with increasing frequency. Sometimes it was work-related, Dad bringing home projects that needed last-minute revisions. Other times, it was Claire dropping by with takeout when Dad mentioned they'd be working late. She always brought enough for me, always remembered I hated cilantro, always asked about my latest art projects. I wasn't stupid. I saw how Dad started wearing his good shirts more often. How he'd check his reflection before opening the door when Claire was coming over. How he laughed more easily around her than he had with anyone since Mom left. But Dad was cautious, too cautious. He kept a professional distance that sometimes felt ridiculous given how Claire looked at him when she thought no one was watching. I wanted to shake him and say, "She likes you, Dad. Do something about it." The argument that led to that kiss had been building for weeks. Dad had been offered a position at a rival firm, better pay, fewer hours, the chance to lead his own team. It was everything he deserved, but it meant leaving Westfield. Leaving Claire. I was furious when he told me he was considering turning it down. "That's insane," I shouted across our kitchen island. "You've been complaining about being undervalued for years, and now you're going to pass up your dream job? For what?" "It's complicated, Lily," he said, rubbing his temples. "Westfield has been good to us. The stability." "This isn't about stability," I interrupted. "This is about Claire." His head snapped up. "This has nothing to do with Claire. It has everything to do with Claire. You're in love with her, Dad. Everyone can see it except you two. That's when the doorbell rang. Dad and I froze, staring at each other. We weren't expecting anyone, but somehow, I knew exactly who it was. Claire stood on our porch, clutching a folder, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "I'm sorry to interrupt your evening," she said, glancing between us and clearly sensing the tension. "But I heard about the offer from Harrington and Associates, and I needed to talk to you before you made any decisions." Dad shot me a warning look as he invited her in. I crossed my arms, refusing to leave. This concerned my future too. "Michael, I understand why you'd consider their offer," Claire began, placing the folder on the counter. "But I've been working on something for weeks. A new position at Westfield, Creative Director of Special Projects. Same salary as Harrington's offering, but with the creative freedom you've always wanted." Dad looked stunned. "You created a position for me?" "The board approved it this afternoon," she said. "You're the only one I want for this role. The only one who could do it justice." "Why?" Dad asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why go to all this trouble for me?" Claire took a deep breath. "Because Westfield needs you." She paused, then added more quietly, "Because I need you." "As an employee?" I interjected, unable to help myself. Claire's eyes flicked to me, then back to Dad. "No," she admitted. "Not just as an employee." Dad looked panicked. "Claire, we work together. You're my boss. It wouldn't be appropriate." "Oh my God, Dad." I exploded. "Are you serious right now? You're going to hide behind workplace policies? You've been miserable for 5 years since Mom left. Claire makes you happy. Anyone with eyes can see that." "Lily, that's enough," Dad warned. "No, it's not enough. You're both adults acting like teenagers. At least I have the excuse of actually being one." Claire was watching this exchange with wide eyes. "Michael, is that true? Do I make you happy?" Dad looked cornered. "Claire, it's complicated. Lily doesn't understand the professional implications." "I understand that you're using work as an excuse because you're scared," I fired back. "You're scared of getting hurt again, so you'd rather be safe and miserable than take a chance on being happy." "You don't know what you're talking about," Dad said, his voice rising. "You don't understand what it's like to have your heart broken, to have someone walk out on you. And you think I want to see that happen to you again?" I shouted. "I don't. But you can't just stop living because Mom made a terrible choice. This isn't about your mother. Then what is it about? Why won't you admit how you feel about Claire?" "Because I can't lose her too." Dad finally yelled, then immediately looked horrified at his own admission. The kitchen fell silent. Claire stood perfectly still, her eyes fixed on my father's face. "You won't lose me," she said softly. Dad shook his head. "You don't know that. Relationships end. People leave. Some people stay," Claire countered, taking a step toward him. "I have Lily to think about," Dad said, his final defense. I threw my hands up in exasperation. "Dad, I love you, but don't use me as an excuse. I like Claire. I've liked her since the day she treated me like a person instead of a kid. I've watched you both dance around each other for months. It's exhausting." Claire laughed suddenly, breaking the tension. "Your daughter is remarkably perceptive, Michael." "She's remarkably something," Dad muttered, but I could see the corner of his mouth twitching. "Michael," Claire said, her voice serious again. "I created this position because you deserve it, because you're brilliant at what you do. That's the professional truth. But the personal truth is that I couldn't bear the thought of not seeing you every day. And that's completely unprofessional of me, and probably inappropriate, and definitely against company policy." "Which you wrote," Dad pointed out. "Which I wrote," she agreed with a small smile. And which I'm willing to revise, or work around, or ignore entirely if it means. Dad was shaking his head again, cutting her off. Claire, we can't just. And that's when it happened. Claire stepped forward, placed her hands on either side of Dad's face, and kissed him. It wasn't a hesitant kiss, or a questioning one. It was decisive, like everything else Claire did. When she pulled back, Dad looked stunned. I was probably grinning like an idiot. That kiss was just for you, Claire said quietly. Not for the architect I'm trying to keep at Westfield. Not for Lily's father. For you, Michael. The man I've been falling in love with for months. Dad stood frozen for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes in a way I hadn't seen in years. I should probably be very professional right now and talk about conflicts of interest, he said. Probably, Claire agreed. Or I could kiss you back instead. I'd prefer that option, Claire said. I cleared my throat loudly. And I'd prefer to not watch my dad make out in our kitchen, so I'm going to my room now. But for the record, I approve. Enthusiastically. As I headed upstairs, I heard Claire laugh, followed by the soft murmur of their voices. I closed my bedroom door, flopped onto my bed, and smiled at the ceiling. For the first time in 5 years, I felt like our little family might be expanding again, not replacing what we'd lost, but creating something new. The next few months weren't easy. Dad and Claire moved carefully, both at work and in their personal relationship. There were awkward moments, adjustments, and a few heated arguments about boundaries and expectations. Claire had never dated a man with a teenage daughter before. Dad had to learn how to balance being a father and being a partner again. And me? I had to get used to sharing Dad's attention, to having another adult voice in our house, to the possibility that this time, someone might actually stay. The first time Claire stayed overnight was a milestone none of us were fully prepared for. I came down for breakfast to find her in our kitchen, wearing Dad's old university sweatshirt, looking simultaneously confident and uncertain. Is this weird? She asked bluntly. Because we can make this less weird if it is. I considered the question while pouring myself orange juice. It's a little weird, I admitted. But not bad weird. Just new weird. She nodded thoughtfully. New weird I can work with. You make really good pancakes, I offered after breakfast. That helps with the weird factor. She smiled. I'll remember that. 6 months after that first kiss, Dad took the creative director position Claire had created. The board implemented new policies about workplace relationships, with Claire recusing herself from decisions directly affecting Dad's career. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, which was more than could be said for half the secret office relationships happening at Westfield anyway. A year later, Claire moved in with us. We repainted the house together, arguing good-naturedly about color schemes and furniture arrangements. Claire's minimalist aesthetic clashed with Dad's and my more eclectic style, but somehow the combination worked, just like us. On my 18th birthday, Dad and Claire took me to dinner at my favorite restaurant. After dessert, Dad cleared his throat nervously. Lily, Claire and I wanted to talk to you about something important. I looked between them. You're getting married, I guessed immediately. Claire laughed. See? I told you she'd figure it out before we said anything. Dad shook his head, smiling. We wanted to make sure you were okay with it before we made any plans. Are you kidding? I've been waiting for this since that kiss in our kitchen 2 years ago. Actually, Claire said, reaching for my hand across the table, there's something else too. Your dad and I have been talking, and, well, if you're comfortable with it, after the wedding, I'd like to legally adopt you. I stared at her, completely caught off guard. But I'm 18. I'm an adult. Legally, yes, she said. But family doesn't end when you turn 18. I want to be your family officially, not just your father's wife. But only if that's something you want too. I looked at Dad, who was watching me with anxious eyes. Then back at Claire, who had gone from being Dad's impossible boss to one of the most important people in my life. I'd like that, I said finally, my voice thick with emotion. I'd like that a lot. The wedding was small, just family and close friends in our backyard the following spring. I was Claire's maid of honor. During the reception, I found a quiet moment to thank her. For what? She asked, genuinely puzzled. For kissing Dad that day. For being brave when he couldn't be. Claire smiled, watching Dad across the yard as he laughed with his brother. Sometimes people need a little push, she said. Your dad had been hurt badly. He needed to know it was safe to try again. And was it? I asked. Safe, I mean? Claire turned to me, her expression serious. Love is never safe, Lily. It's always a risk. But some risks are worth taking. As I watch them now, dancing together in our living room to no music at all, I think about how a single moment can change everything, one brave action, one honest admission, one kiss that says what words cannot. Dad catches me watching and extends his hand, inviting me to join their impromptu dance. Claire makes room for me in their embrace, and for a moment, the three of us sway together, a family built not from obligation or biology, but from choice. From courage. From love that arrived unexpectedly but stayed intentionally. Sometimes the family you build is even stronger than the one you're born into. Sometimes the hardest arguments lead to the most important truths. And sometimes, a kiss that seems impulsive is actually the most carefully considered decision of all. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about family, love, and the courage it takes to build a life worth living. Remember that second chances don't just happen, they're created by brave people willing to take risks for the possibility of happiness.